Well, we are excited to have Mr. Evan McGonagle join us on Legacy Conversations on a dreary April spring day.
I think he needs a little more credit. It's not snowing.
It's not too bad.
So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
taking
warm.
it.
It's warm.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you.
Good to see you again. Thanks for letting me come up and bother you for a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you were excited to come in and do the podcast.
News to me, but yes.
It's the best way to do the podcast is when you say, hey, by the way.
There's no planning. There's no
planning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the good thing about this podcast is
It's no script.
there's no script. Yeah.
Jump
We're just chatting about things.
Yeah. It's a very clever way to do it.
It is. It is. So I always start with like how we met, at least like for the first season. The whole idea was like, how do I meet the person that was in front of me? And I think I met you through the Eldred family.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my first interaction with you was I was interviewing for a job at the Eldreds, and you were on vacation. I think I bumped into you.
Never on vacation.
Yeah, never on vacation. And you were down in Bethany, and you said, hey, if you're down here, if you want to swing over, we can chit chat for a little bit. So I thought that was my first time meeting you, and then kind of developed from there.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like forever ago. I don't know if it was that long ago, but
It was before I had kids, so that was
yeah. So it was
7. I think Ellie's 7 now. She's her birthday, so it's 8 years ago.
yeah. That's pretty
It's
crazy.
a long time ago.
Yeah. So tell me, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Genoa, New York. So it's about an hour and a bit from here.
Yeah. And then you weren't, right now you're in the agricultural sector, which we'll get into for a second, but you weren't always in agriculture.
No, I grew up. It's a pretty rural area, and grew up loving tractors and chucking hay bales, and kind of grew up in that space, but never really formally on a farm. And then I went on harvest crew when I was 18 and did the Texas to Central Canada and back down to Nebraska. And so it was in the ag space and really enjoyed it, but never really thought that was going to be my career path. So went to school to be a special education teacher, did that for a couple of years. Decided it really wasn't a good fit for me, but still wasn't sure what I was going to do next. I ended up going into, started my master's program at the same time. Another mentor of mine had challenged me to kind of say, is this really what you want to do? And I got a job in corporate America working for TIA Craft, doing leadership development and training for them. And then was flying all around and decided that I wanted to move back home and get back into the ag space. So stumbled into working for the Eldreds on their farm, and today I work for Dumond.
So when you came back to Eldred's, Eldredge is a very large dairy farm.
Yeah.
And then when you moved on to Dumond's is a little bit different. So they feed cows mostly. They don't have cows.
Yeah.
So what does that organization do today?
Yeah. So Dumond's is an incredible place. So is the Elders family. That's a very a really incredible family farm that they've got there. But Dumond's is a little different. So instead of feeding cows, they produce feed that feeds cows. So Dumond's is a grain operation in Union Springs, New York. They produce 4 main feed products as well as trade grain as well. There's a 7,000 acre crop farm associated with it as well. So that's run by Tim Foster. He does an incredible job. He's a great agronomist. And so Todd really has this vision of this circular economy where we can grow grain, produce a feed product out of that grain, and ultimately try to end up with a carbon neutral outcome and be able to produce a fuel product that ends up fueling the equipment. Mm-hmm. So Dumond's is really about trying to be this very carbon neutral space and produce these feed products. So right now we produce a soy meal product, soy oil, cornmeal product, and a roasted bean product.
Mm-hmm. And all of that is actually produced right there, just south of Auburn.
Yeah, so everything we make, so we buy and trade grain into that facility, and then everything we make and we produce right there and ship out of that facility. So we feed a lot of farms in the Q County area, but our reach is most of New York.
Mm-hmm. So I've been there, so I know it, and it didn't start with the size and scope it is today. But give me an idea at harvest, right? So at harvest, there's some trucks that come in and fill up some bins full of corn and soybeans, a little bit of wheat, that type of stuff. And there's a whole bunch of steel sitting there. Give me an idea of the size and scope of the facility that's in Auburn.
Yeah, so the facility's grown immensely over the last couple of years. So there used to really be like just the main farm that had a couple grain bins to now we've got a little bit south that it's probably about 2 million bushels of storage on site. And yeah, at harvest, right now we might see 20 to 30 trucks a day between in and outbound, between grain and feed products. At harvest, you could see 100, 150 trucks in and out of that facility. What's really cool about that facility is almost all of it's automated, so that way we can get trucks in and out of there really quickly. And like one of our fastest pits, we can get a truck turned in and out of there in about 10 minutes.
Okay. So help me understand bushels for the person who doesn't know what a bushel is. When you say it's a couple million bushels, give me an idea of like size and scope.
Yeah, so a bushel is just a unit of measure. So most like a semi, a full hopper bottom semi is probably about between 11 and 1,200 bushels of grain.
Okay.
And so some of our bins will range between, a smaller bin would be like 20,000 bushels, so the 20 truckloads approximately. And like one of our biggest bins holds about 870,000 bushel. So we kind of call that our just south of a million bushel bin.
Yep.
I believe the stat is it's the second largest bin this side of the Mississippi. So we kind of held on to the biggest one for about a week, and then another bin went.
And then somebody else makes it bigger.
Yeah, it's always going to be one more person's going to build one bigger. But yeah, it's a pretty good size bin.
Right. So if you think about it, it takes 800 tractor trailer loads to fill that bin?
Yeah, it takes quite a few.
Ish, plus or minus a few?
Yep.
So there's some guy or gal who pulls in with a tractor trailer load with a whole bunch of stuff, feels like I got this big load, falls out of the bottom, dumps out of the back, goes into this big pit. They push it into like some conveyor, shoves it to the top, falls down into this bin. And when he unloads his tractor trailer and it's the first or the second one, it looks like there's nothing in there because 800 more.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool experience when we sweep that big bin. So basically there's an auger that runs around the bottom of it when you empty out the bin. When we go to refill it, the first couple loads, like it's just like beans dropping on the ground. It doesn't even make anything by which you would even see that there's a layer of anything. So it's really interesting. Just the first 10, 15 loads, that's all you hear is beans hitting the floor.
How big is it in diameter?
105 feet.
105 feet in diameter. So it's massive.
It's huge.
Yeah. And one of the things you brought up was that like when you sweep it out, so like the beans can't be in there in perpetuity, right? They have to turn over at some point because it's a product that can rot or whatever. So how long does it take to fill it versus how long does it take to empty it?
So it'll probably take us, depending on truck traffic, it could take us a couple weeks to fill that bin. And then to empty it, because we're a processing facility, it'll get emptied based on our current production. Yep. So like right now we might use about 10,000 bushel a day coming out of that bin. So it'll take us a little while to pull out of there, but it's not as long as you think it is. And also we're still shipping in products. So that bin's constantly coming down and we're filling it, constantly coming down and we're filling it. One of the big things for us is because we're a processing facility, we might retain grain in that bin for up to 9 months, 10 months. Mm-hmm. And we try to get it empty for harvest. So we're constantly cycling the bin at least once a year. Yep. But it's a really tricky dance to be able to keep enough beans on hand so we can process them to make feed products because it's a 24/7 facility and cows eat 24/7. So we can't miss. So we always had to have products on hand. So it's this really delicate balance between how do we at harvest get empty just enough so that way we can make sure we cycle the bin, but also make sure we have enough product on hand that we can produce a product. So it's just really, there's like our merchandisers get really stressed out at about 3 weeks before harvest because we're playing this dance of counting truckloads in and out so we can keep this balance in effect.
Yeah. So I imagine even though it's a pretty automated facility and there's a whole bunch of things that go in and out, like it depends on people. Still a lot of people there that have to make things work.
Yeah, I would say, automation is incredible, and my background is really in people, and I will say it forever that people are the most important thing in that business. And we can have all the nice bells and whistles you want, but the people are what makes the business really thrive and be successful is also it's the thing that what you come to work for every day. You're really there to help support not only the people that we work with, but the community and the people we're involved with. So trying to really focus on that. And I think it's one of the really cool things about Todd and the business he's created at Dumond is trying to really be focused on team and culture and people. And so that was really why it became a really good fit for me.
Yeah. Because it's interesting because the business goal is to help the local farmer provide, a market for their product, pay them a reasonable wage to make that happen, take that in, it employs people in the community, and then build a product that can help the other folks in the area, a lot of dairy cows there, feed their cows as efficiently as possible so they can get the most out of it.
Yeah.
And that's part of that circular economy you were talking about. But for Todd, it was a little bit more about the crop size and the carbon side, but it is also about the community side and everything else to do with like upstate New York agriculture. Because he's a big player. If you take, you guys think about it, the amount of beans and corn that comes in there, 800-900 tractor trailer loads over a 2 or 3 month period, it's a lot of product.
Yeah, there's a lot of commodity moving through there. And I think one of the things that Todd, he always kind of reminds us, one of the big points of pride for him was in his first couple of years of grinding corn. So we're a non-GMO corn facility. We produce a non-GMO product. He was able to buy really well from the farmers and give them as much money as he could, but also sell a fairly affordable non-GMO product. And in doing that, and Todd's really incredible at this, which is watching the market and watching the trends. And he was able to put more money in than what it costs on either end of it. So trying to add as much value as he can, and to a fault, we're farmers first. So he will always try to make sure that we kind of support as well as we can to support the farmer who's on both ends of that equation.
Yeah.
It's a really hard balance. And I think Todd's done a really good job of trying to find that mix there. But trying to be supportive in that community of people that
for sure
support us as well.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your role. So what do you do there? And I know the answer to part of this because I feel like it's changed a whole bunch over the last several years. But like currently, where do you spend most of your time?
Yeah, so I think it's ever evolving for me. I think that's part of one of the fun parts of it. What I was hired for and what I do today are pretty different. Yeah. So I think at the time, it's a 24/7 operation. Todd was running the elevator and Justin Wayne, who's an incredible team member as well. We're running the plant and running everything at night, and they just needed help. So they brought me in to kind of help support building a team. So now we've got a really stable team with super low turnover, which I think is incredible to be able to have a team that's prolonged and stand the test of time. My role now went from being like, hey, like you got to, like on top of growing the team and building the team and supporting operations and wear many hats. That's starting to get a little bit more defined as like, okay, you don't have to be the master of everything.
Yeah.
Like we need to really proficient and specific at operations versus, my day when I started could have been driving a truck, delivering oil. It could have been helping with logistics. It could have been over in the office. It could have been anywhere. We just had this like upstart mentality of like, you're going to do everything and do all of it. And we're going to not be particularly good at it, but it all needs to get done. And so now it's really been afforded the opportunity to be much more specific. And like, we're just going to focus on operation. What can we do 1% better every day?
Yeah. So
I don't need you to worry about trucking. I don't need you to worry about all this other stuff. We've hired really good talent in the last 3 years to be able to build this really strong team. Right. So that way we can be very good at our specific area. So my role went from master of everything and having to be in every meeting and every single thing that happened to now. So my role is now VP of operations. So I support the home farm feed movement and grain movement production. So only really having to be a master at that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a volume business. So the idea of getting 1% better seems a bit cliche, but the idea of being as efficient as possible, because it is a commodity business and there's only so much
you can do. So much margin in it.
Right. So you're squeezing out pennies, but you're doing it over large volumes.
Yeah. And again, you're trying to bring the most value you can to the farmer who's growing the crop, and also to the farmer who's going to ultimately buy the feed product. So you're trying to find a way to do as best a job that you can on both ends of it, while also trying to make sure you can support the middle.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that's sustainable from a business standpoint, but also from a global impact perspective, and trying to make sure all of these things kind of work together.
Yeah. 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 So I think it's a great facility. It's come up relatively quickly if you think about it, and it's something that the area really needed, so it was really neat. Well, I'd love you to tell me a little bit more about the products, because I think the average person drives by and sees cornfield or a soybean field. They probably know what corn is, right? Because they grew up realizing what corn is. Some people would be like, I don't know what those are when they say the soybeans, but let's do corn for a second first, because it's the easiest, right? So corn grows and you got this cob that has these little kernels on there, and that's got some protein and some value into it, which is the commodity part, which is the stuff that you guys deal with.
Yeah.
So what do you take in? What are the products you make? How does it supplement a diet for a cow?
Yeah, so just like at corn's one of the easiest ones for us. It's not the easiest, I will say, from a grower perspective, because there's all these different things we have to pay attention to, and it doesn't get enough kind of, I guess, stage light on some of this stuff is. So when we're bringing in corn, our farmers worked all year, they put all their inputs into it. Corn prices right now aren't great, so we're trying to balance that as well, but also we have to pay attention to strictly to qualities, because not only are we're buying grain from the farmer, but we're also turning around selling that cornmeal to a consumer of it. So if we're going into dairy.
Cornmeal, what's cornmeal?
So cornmeal is basically, we take whole corn.
Those kernels that are off of the
cob. Yeah. Ideally, they've been threshed and cleaned in some way, so we're really just dealing with just the corn product itself. We'll then store it for some amount of time, and then we will run it through our hammer mill. So our hammer mill is basically it's a motor attached to a shaft with some hammers on it, which are just planks of metal, and then the material gets spun through that and then gets pushed, or in our case, there's screens around the outside as a vacuum on it that basically will pull the material through. And basically, once it gets sized smaller than the screen, it can come through that.
And it has to be at it can't be super wet either, right?
No, so ideally, commodity corn is about 15.5% moisture. We really want to stay right on that. So there's some little nuances. So because we're a long-term storage facility, we tend to try to dry corn to about 13.5 or 14.5, because we know we might have that corn for many months. And it's really, once it's in the bin, it's kind of hard to manage. So our corn bins are about 375,000 bushels. So there's a lot of grain in there.
Yeah.
So how do you manage it and control it? We go off on a whole ton of time.
Yeah.
How do you manage grain in the bin at that scale? But so for cornmeal specifically, it's we bring grain in, run it through a hammer mill, and then we'll load it onto a truck. And then it gets fed into a dairy TMR, primarily as an energy source.
Yeah.
So we have to be really careful with it, though, because in a TMR, we're balancing all these different ingredients. And, cows can respond to those differently. So depending on your inclusion in the ration. So one of the things we really have to pay attention to is vomitoxins. So every load that comes in, we test for toxins. So we know what our inbound, outbound, there's different thresholds. We're really targeting as little as we can, but our target threshold's about a 1 or a 2. And then that puts a warning flag on it for us. And then we can accept up to 5. We want to maintain an average well below that, because that's when we have to start feeding binders and stuff into the dairy ration. So we really keep an eye on that. And so we do all in-house testing on that as well. So we've got a full-time QA guy, and he basically, Jonathan Bustos, who's also incredible, will basically take random pull samples of the corn to test for toxins to make sure both on the inbound and outbound look good, but also constantly checking the cornmeal grind. So we're targeting about a 350 to 400 micron or lower. 400 really being the max. 350 is kind of the target micron on the grind. So how well is it ground so that it can be optimal for the dairy diet?
Easiest to digest.
Yep.
Yeah. Farmers grow this corn product. They grow it all year long. They wait for it to dry down. They harvest it. They put it through this combine, picks out the kernels. The kernels come to you. Hopefully it's more kernels than it is other stuff, right? Yeah. You get the kernels inside there. If they're not dry enough, then you guys put them through a big dryer, get them to a place, you put them into a bin. They get moved from that bin into a thing that basically grinds it up to like a powdery corn type thing. There's more to it than just grind it up and sell it, right? Yep. There's some chemistry behind it. And then it gets sent out as a piece of the diet. And that's like one of the products that comes there. And it seems super simple, but it's not, because you're not grinding all the corn all the time. And the ground cornmeal is hard to store because it's such a flaky thing. So if you get any moisture, you like ruin it. So it's almost like it needs to be fresh.
Yeah, so it's just-in-time manufacture, basically.
Just-in-time. I like it. Yeah. Just-in-time manufacturing.
Just-in-time manufacturing. So we basically, if you're ordering cornmeal today, I'm shipping you cornmeal that's made today.
Yeah.
The only time that would really happen is if we'll probably pre-grind some stuff on Saturday or Sunday, just so that we start the week with a full bin.
Sure.
But if you ordered cornmeal today, you got cornmeal that I ground today.
Yeah.
We don't really want to keep that in a bin for too long.
Right.
But yeah, so that's cornmeal is very moisture sensitive.
Yeah.
Especially when you start putting it in your own bins.
Yeah.
Just trying to make sure that it has it has a pretty good shelf life, but it's more just trying to make sure that flowability stays with it.
Yeah.
And we're not picking up any surface moisture when we're starting to move the stuff around.
Yeah, and realistically, you are using a commodity that rots, right? So if you put all that stuff in a bin and it's subject to water and exposure, then it's going to rot, and that's not good, right?
Yeah.
People don't like eating that stuff. Cows don't like
No,
eating
cows
it.
really don't. They're really susceptible to it. So really trying to make sure you manage that really well. For us, it starts all the way back at the inbound product and making sure we know what we're buying and what the test weight and the moisture of is it. But then even for, again, it's some of our corn goes into a 300 and some thousand bushel bin. There's a lot of grain there. It's a lot of money in that bin. So how do we make sure we maintain that bin all year long as you're trying to get in? Because you, as the farmer, are expecting a certified stamped product that says it has to meet these standards because this is what I'm feeding my cows.
Right.
So we have to make those standards. So there's a lot of quality check along the way.
Yeah. And realistically, the other part, we won't go off into the technical piece of this, but like when that corn goes into that bin and it goes in at a specific level, it's not like it just sits there. There's air moving over it, and then, there's a lot of technology in that bin to make sure that it stays at the moisture it needs, because you don't need it picking up surface moisture. You don't need the rain slipping in a crack.
No.
Like that. That's all bad stuff.
Yeah, and again, it starts to exaggerate as you get into these bigger and bigger bins.
Yeah.
So we've got some technology in some of the bins. We've got moisture cables, temperature cables in bins. The bins have aeration fans on the top, and at our roof exhauster fans at the top, and bin fans at the bottom.
Yep.
Some of our bins are automated, so we can say, hey, this is, we want to maintain this in the bin, and it starts to do some checks. But a lot of it's very manual. So you go climb the bin, you go put a probe in it, you go check it, you put eyes on it. And then you have to constantly look at the weather. So today it's warmer today, but the grain in the bin's cooler. So now we start to see some humidity start to form in the bin roofs. Now you got to go turn those on. So it's a constant checking. Yeah. So it isn't what I would have experienced growing up on like a smaller, like a 36-foot bin, farm bin. Like you might maybe touch it maybe a couple times a year. Condition it down where you want in the fall, and then you might touch it or check it. You might core the bin one time. You might just check it one time. We're constantly checking these bins because we're always moving them. We want to make sure that grain stays in the best quality we can.
Yeah, and if something goes wrong and you've got 375,000 bushels in there,
it's a problem.
You divide that by some dollar figure, and it's a lot.
Yeah, and there's a lot of responsibility on that team to make sure we manage that grain and protect that grain. Yeah. And for us, we don't have many bins of sharing the same product. So it's like we have one non-GMO corn bin. So if something goes wrong in that bin, there's really not many options for us to be able to move it. So hopefully over time we can make different operational changes on some of our smaller bins to do that. But again, because we're a processing facility, all the non-GMO corn goes into one bin. So how do we start to manage that?
Right.
Yeah, it's a fun project. We have a new elevator manager, John Weatherstone, who actually was a merchandiser and has now moved into that position, and he's having to learn all of this, and it's good, like drinking on the fire hose, because he's like, I had no idea there was all these little nuances. And I'm like, you got to know the weather every day.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, the corn was fine yesterday, it'll be fine today.
Yeah.
So there's all these little things that we're just starting to tease into paying attention to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because, like you just said, he's our elevator operator, and I think a lot of people would be like Otis elevator. Like, what are you talking about?
Going up.
Yeah, going up.
Yeah.
But basically, the elevator meaning he's responsible for the grain going from one place up to the top and kind of goes in, and then it has to come out. It has to come out. So the elevator is that process on how you move things from one bin to somewhere else to get manufactured to another part of the facility, which doesn't seem like you need an elevator manager until you start thinking about, well, there's 400,000 bushels that have to go from here to here, and it's stacked 50, 60, 80, 100 feet high.
Yeah.
Like, it is a big deal. Like,
It's a very big deal. There's a lot of responsibility on the team, right? So we, if you just look at the elevator, right, we talk about feed products, but if you just look at the elevator's got to move 10, 20, 30 trucks a day of product in and out. And they got to make sure that all the product that you've brought me is of the right spec. And then I got to put it in the right bin. And then I got to make sure we've managed it, meaning the grain itself is managed, but also the assets that move the grain back and forth. I mean, elevators at its core is chutes and ladders. So we use these elevators, which are basically the ladders, and we can convey the grain vertically. And then from there, it slides down these basically chutes. And then that puts it into the bins that it's supposed to be in. But there's all these little dances that happen as part of that move.
Sure.
So you have to really be paying attention to it. And our system is very automated. However, it's only as smart as we make it, and it's only as smart as the thing that was controlling the previous step. So if something goes wrong in there, you really have to know what's going on.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is like, well, if something gets clogged and it runs for a few seconds and it's only 5 feet long, it's no big deal. But if this thing's 80 or 90 feet long and it's 2 feet in diameter and it gets clogged, it's a big deal. There's a lot of people undoing a lot of stuff, shoveling things out to fix it.
Yeah, so we've got one of the biggest grain pumps in the country, which is basically a piece of conveyance that moves grain either kind of vertically or at an increased angle. If those things plug up, there's no way to fix them unless you take them apart.
Right.
And this specific one is 130 feet in the air. So
not super easy.
Minor problem. So it becomes very interesting, the dance of like, well, how hard do you push it? And we can move a little bit more grain, but then we start to risk some of this stuff. So I think there's a lot of management. How do we move this stuff? And what are your set points in paying attention to this?
Well, and that's what makes you guys experts in it. It's more than just, those guys take in stuff and move it from one place to another. There's a lot of technical expertise.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. And even just like the settings on a pit. So we can move more bushels per hour or more truckloads per hour just by changing a position of a setting in a pit. And it could take
so a pit is a truck drives over.
Yeah, I'm really not doing great.
No, it's fine.
Using new words and not backing
right.
up.
And you have this grain in this truck, and somehow falls out of the bottom. The truck dumps it in. It goes into this pit in the floor.
Yeah.
And then there's this mechanism in the floor that takes it and moves it to some sort of elevator, right? Some sort of conveyor belt or something that moves it to a place. Then it can get elevation, so it can get high, so it can drop into wherever it needs to be. And that pit is a big, huge thing. And if it gets solid with stuff, that's a problem.
Yeah, it can't unload anything.
Yeah.
We can make these adjustments to this. It's just basically a big hole in the ground with a piece of conveyance at the bottom. We can make all these adjustments. We can run the conveyance faster or slower. We can change this basically plates that basically allow more grain or less grain to flow in to that conveyance. And that's there to help protect the conveyance, because if it takes too much, it can plug.
Yeah.
And if it does that, then your unload time starts to take longer, because now we're constantly plugging and unplugging. So we can adjust these plates to basically maximize the volume and speed that the conveyance can take it at. But making minor adjustments between commodities. So one of our great strengths, but also great opportunities, is that we take in, at any one point, we could be receiving 5 different products, which means that pit is seeing up to 5 different products at any point. Well, those plates are manual adjustments, so it's not like in between products. So we try to find a happy medium based on all the products.
Right.
Well, now you start talking at harvest, you end up with wet grains and dry grains. Well, they flow differently. And now we have 4 or 5 different products that are maybe wet or dry.
Right.
Well, now those plates are in all kinds of different places. So we try to optimize it, but paying attention to those details of like, where are these things positioned in the pit, and can we optimize for today's needs versus tomorrow's needs, and where those things are. So again, John Weatherstone, bless him, is taking on a big learning curve right now to figure out what are all these little nuances. And Todd has a very high standard of what we do and how we do it, which is incredible, and trying to build all these processes. And with that, kind of going back to the people, like, we have really incredible people. So how do we help bring them along and help build these standards? Because these standards pass along to the customer, which is that experience they have, which is from the moment they get there, what's the experience they have with the quality of our ability to unload the product they have and also pick up the product they're hoping to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it. So I want to change from corn to soybeans, because I know that's a big
part of our business.
It's a big part of your business. So soybeans, I guess we should have one here, but basically, so soybean, there's a lot of them around. It's a rotational crop with corn, which is kind of nice, meaning that if you grow corn after corn after corn, and you don't treat the ground, it sucks out the same type of material, like minerals and that type of stuff, and it makes it harder for the plant to thrive.
Yeah.
So you throw fertilizer, you throw manure on it, and when you put soybeans on there, it's a complementary product to corn. Also, soybeans is another high protein bean, right? That cows really, really like, for example. So you guys take in these soybeans. So this combine goes over the field, and it gets it dries down. Hopefully God dries it a long way before you have to dry it. And the combine goes over the field, gets rid of all the leaves and the stems, picks the little beans out, throws them to the back of the combine, ends up in the back of a truck, shows up at your facility.
Yeah.
Now, what do you guys do with soybeans?
All kinds of things. So soybeans is really kind of our niche in the market. So for us, beans are a really good source of protein for livestock. So primarily in dairy diets. It's got really good protein source. It's got some really good oils in it and fats. It's an oil seed. So we can use those oils and fats in a diet depending on what your needs are. Too much fat can be a problem in a rumen, but we can manage that in different ways. So we have two different products. So we do a roasted bean product, which basically heat treats the bean, and basically can make that oil. It has 100% of the oil that's in the bean available. So soybeans range from 15 and 22% oil. All of the fat and oil stays in the bean. It's just a little bit harder for the cow to access. What really makes us unique in the product is our product called Promax, which is a mechanically extracted soy meal. So we bring in those beans, we'll clean them. We'll bring those beans up to about 110 degrees, and we'll take out about a couple points of moisture. Most commodity beans are 13.5% moisture. We'll bring those down to about 9.5, which basically just makes it a more dense product. And as we get further into the process, too much moisture becomes a problem. So from there, they go into a hammer mill. We'll basically try to size the product a little bit so it's a little bit easier to work with and have more surface area. We'll run them into these really cool pieces of equipment called extruders, which basically is a major workhorse in the product. Which basically will rupture the cell walls in the soybean. So think of like you look under a microscope and you look at like the leaf and you can see that outer wall on the plant. We're basically trying to rupture that cell wall so that way all the oil and all that product becomes very accessible. So in that process, we heat treat it as well. So basically we can start to make a product that's really specific to dairy diets. So in the extruder, we'll make all that fat very accessible. We then run it into, by the way, we do that all with pressure. So we use a 500 horse electric motor. It basically has 3 different chambers that apply pressure to the bean as it works its way through, but it'll go from 100 degrees up to 315 degrees through pressure only. So there's an immense amount of force going through that. We'll then run it into a press, which basically just looks like a juicer you have at home. We basically squeeze the meal and try to get as much of the oil out as we can. We're targeting about a 6.5% oil residual in the cake. So the rest of that oil we're trying to retain, and we can use that oil for other things. So the press basically is starting to make that final product for us. So the meal ends up going into mostly dairy diets. So we'll basically size that down and grind it and cool it. And then that ends up as what we call Promax, as a high protein soy meal product that you can feed to have your protein needs in your TMR. The oil we use gets sold to go into biodiesel. So that can then turn into diesel fuel that you can come back to the farm, you can fill up your tank with, which is part of Todd's circular economy of trying to how do we keep this not only in New York State, but how do we keep that value chain to the farmer? Or we can use it into like a pelletized feed. So a lot of feed that you'd get, like a horse feed, is a dry mix, and then they run it through a pelletizer and they bind it with oil. So that soybean oil, it's an all natural. There's no solvent, no anything in it. So a lot of the cooking oil you get, vegetable oil, is primarily soybean oil, but it's primarily from a hexane plant. So this is a mechanical process. So I mean, there's no
rather than chemical extrusion.
Yes,
it's mechanical.
Yeah, so there's no chemicals left over in any of the products, which makes it a better product, both the soy and the oil for dairy. But also for whatever other use you'd use for. There's no trace of any other chemicals in the product. So the soy meal product is really what makes us unique in the market, and what we're able to do with beans, and that's a big consumer of beans. But yeah, it's a pretty neat process, and we love giving tours. We love showing it to people and showing what we can do. But we'll say there's a lot of process in that's very, very rigid. So it's, we have to hit very specific targets along the way. And there's a lot of quality control within there to make sure that we can make the best product we can make.
Yeah. I just know, like, the company wise, you guys are really focused on quality and the value back, right? So there's other competitors for a soy meal product, and the focus that you guys have is hey, can we make a better one? Right.
Yeah.
And you've been able to find a way to make it better. And then instead of taking something that would be a waste product from doing that and throwing it away, it's like, hey, how can we use this? How can we best use it? And if it's making fuel, great. If it's making binding agent, great. Whatever it is, but we're not going to take some natural product and just throw it away or put it in the landfill or whatever.
Yeah, and again, how do we make it so it has value to New York State and New York State ag? And what else can we do with this thing? So I think we're trying to come up with different ways that we can use it in different markets that we can use that for, but also like how do we use other inputs in our, so how do we find other ways to partner with local businesses that could use this product? So can we use this in other rations or other things that are just not, top of mind for us today? Yeah. So there's a lot of future for some of these products here, and how do we help grow that here? And the greater good is the more we can find a use for some of these products and more markets we can get into, the more ability we have to consume more beans and more product in New York State and get those beans here and keep the value for New York State.
Yeah. If you think about like the future, what do you think the future in the industry is?
I mean, there's a lot of really cool things going on in the ag space right now, especially in this area. So I think there's a lot of good. I think there's a lot of technology that's coming into play. So automation's a really big thing. I do think with the way the markets are looking, it's going to be a really hard run for a little bit. But I think there's a lot of good coming, especially in the dairy space, which is where we're very tied to. I think with that, there's a lot more competition. So sure. I think it'll be really interesting in the next couple of years to see how some of these dynamics play into it. I think, especially from my seat in Dumond's, I think we're excited to be a part of helping support a lot of these dairies and their growth and their needs, but also trying to help support a lot of the farmers and what they're trying to do to help balance out all their needs. So how do we help support growing more beans in the state? Because nitrogen inputs are really high right now. So how do we help balance some of those? Can you grow some more beans in some of your ground? And how do we work with you to keep that stuff local? So I think there's a lot of good on the horizon in the ag space. I'm really excited to be a part of it. And there's a lot of stuff that, coming from the outside in banking and you would never think there's all this here. So I think that's always been a really cool thing for me is getting to see this side of agriculture and how innovative it is. I mean, Todd's talking about some really cool technology that would basically, we would have no need for electricity coming from nice ag. So how do we start to build some of that stuff and the stuff you would never even think is really going to be something you'd see on an agricultural use?
Well, and I think the other thing that's interesting is there's no off-the-shelf product for what you guys build or have built, right? So it's not like you can just call up a company and be like, we need a soybean pressing facility. Send us a design, right? We need, you can buy a mill to grind stuff. You can buy a dryer. You can buy a bin, but put it all together and make something. It's like, well, you got to figure it out. So competition's great, right? Because it leads to innovation. It helps prices come down at some point and it advances technology. But when you're the first one in, you're the ones that are testing the technology, which makes it fun, but it also is interesting.
Yeah, I think we have R&D'd a lot of equipment to do what we do, and we've modified a lot of equipment to do it. And to your point, there is no off the shelf for what we do. I think there's and what we found is a lot of equipment manufacturers, whether it be cornmeal, roasted beans, or soy meal, what we do, that make a product that make a tool that produces a product, but it might not be the best version of the product. It'll do it, but it's not quite right. So especially when we start talking about dairy feeds and we're trying to get high bypass or lower residual fat. So there are presses out there in our case for the soy meal that can press meal, but in the process of doing that, they start to cook the meal and they might start to burn the lysine. And so now that protein isn't as good as it could be. So we've had to alter and modify a lot of our equipment to hit the target market. And we've had to work with the manufacturer. I mean, we were the first to have some of this equipment and we've had to work with them and rebuild it and change it. And, the beauty of some of what Todd's done is he's an engineer. And so he's able to look at some of these problems and go, okay, great. Like, that's great. I want to push it to here. But then we need to go change all these parts to have this to solve this problem. And a lot of it is driven for how do we add more value to the customer? How do we make a better product for the customer? And so it's been really fun. I will say, like, there are challenging moments when you're really building an extruder at 3:00 in the morning because you can't stay on. Yeah. But I think it's ultimately in service, and it's been a fun experience to help challenge and help push some of this equipment so that we can really make a really cool and innovative product that it's targeted for what the market needs.
Yeah, and I think innovation is part of the key there, right? Folks don't necessarily see agriculture as the innovative space, right? They're looking for the robots and all that other stuff, but really the innovation that's gone on in that plant in Auburn is pretty significant.
Yeah, when you drive by, you would have no idea this is going on, but you start to take a tour, and again, like you start to walk around the plant and see what we're doing. It's like, wow. Like, I mean, a problem of the day working with is how do we clean the oil that comes off these presses, 5% better. So how can we get it so that way we can eliminate a whole step in our process so we can become more efficient? And we've done tours of plants, and we went down to a plant in Kentucky. They have a $3 million skid for cleaning oil. We're producing better quality oil with an asset that costs $150,000 than their $3 million skid is. And we're doing it every day consistently, and we've got testing and supporting it and process to back it up. And so how do we continue to do that type of learning and help push the equipment and understand how do we use it?
So I think one of the things that people want to know, right? So ProMax wasn't around 10 years ago. But in theory, it's a better sliced bread, right? And there's lots of reasons behind that. Yeah. We can get one of the sales guys in here and tell us about how great it is. But what's the next product? What's the next thing out there?
So I think for us, there's a couple different things we got coming down the pipeline we're interested in trying to explore to make a better product. I think the next thing for us is kind of looking at carbon and trying to make a carbon neutral product, because I think the market is starting to go there. And I'm probably not the best mouthpiece for this. I'm more regurgitating what I have been inspired by from Todd or from some of the conversations we've had. But a lot of where the market is going, we've talked to some companies that are saying, hey, like we want to be able to have this label or this packaging that says, we are carbon neutral, or we are negative carbon. So how do we communicate that in our feed? And how do we make decisions that drive that across how we manufacture the feed? So I think that's like the immediate next thing that we're chasing.
Well, and then figure out if we know that there may be a global value to reduce the carbon output, but then
is there value?
To the end consumer, does that farm saying, well, I'm willing to spend more for that or not? And I think that's always been the issue is like, I'd love for you to get carbon neutral or carbon less than neutral, right? Yet you're sequestering more than you're actually producing, but I'm just not willing to pay for it. But maybe the guy down the road will pay for it. I'm just not super interested in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting dynamic, right? So, the farmer they're working their tails off to produce high quality product, and they're making really good agronomy decisions, and they're trying really hard, and there's all these expenses and out of their control. And how do you say on top of that, I also need you to spend $2,000 to be audited for carbon neutrality and just prove that you did it? So I think if the market could present a value for it, I mean, with anything, if the market can present a value for it, then there's a chase. But someone's got to go first. Someone's got to say this is worth chasing. This is worth inspiring people to also try it. So I think Todd did this with non-GMO corn growth for us, which was like someone had to say we were going there first. Yeah. So I think it'd be really interesting to see if we can get enough momentum behind it. Sure. But someone's got to start somewhere. So I think we're trying to, lead some of that and put some boxes around about how do we do it and how do we help support others in their process of doing. But I think it feels like that there is starting to be some show of demand for it, especially in the milk space. So some of it's trying to just tail into that and keep up with it. Yeah. 10 years from now, who knows?
Well, and it's interesting, like there's a type of bean, right? We don't have to go into this thing here. That's a whole other podcast, but like not all soybeans are the same, right? And there's high oleic beans. There's all of this type of stuff that wasn't around, I don't think 50 years ago, but we've been able to produce these beans that have quality that we want. So going forward, part of it is that innovation of like, how do we get better products out? And then part of the innovation is on the commodity itself. And then how do you work and manufacture that commodity? Like if you bring it up to heat, it changes the principles on the other end. So how do you produce it colder? Maybe there's some technology we've never heard of before that's going to come out. So I think it's pretty cool because you guys sit in this idea of first to market-ish, right? Not the first soybean facility ever, but but one that's doing something different, trying to jump on board and saying, hey, let's help the industry kind of go this way, and then making the investment to do that. Investing in people, but not afraid investing in innovation. And then for folks, just really to understand how big the scale is. We drive by and you see a lot of steel and you're like, oh, that's pretty impressive. But you don't understand the innovation and what has to happen. Like when somebody presses a button and they move some grain somewhere, there's a challenge to that, right? And everything looks easy from the road, but nobody's driving by at 2 a.m. when the lights are on because some guy needs a whole bunch of Promax and we don't have enough to fill his order the next day.
Yeah, I think that applies across the industry, right?
I think that's everybody.
You go to any farm and
for sure.
If you're from, I've been fortunate enough to be adjacent to the industry and growing up and being a part of it, but it was kind of like, it was for fun.
Yeah.
Being in it on the other side of it and being fully committed and into it and starting to talk to these farmers and not only the hardships they face and what they're working on, but also like how innovative and also the amount of stuff they have to know. I mean, if when sitting on my seat, at TI Craft, it was the things I had to know and be responsible for was the box was this big and I had really good at it, but like this was the box. You start getting it, start talking to farmers and it's like, well, I'm having to watch market trends and I'm having to be a really good agronomist. I'm having to be a tractor mechanic. I'm having to be a nutritionist and and it's not, and there's resources for them, but like they have to know it all from end to end. I think that's a part that really gets missed and how innovative they have to be. Each one of those things, because they have to be efficient. They can't spend all day just being an accountant. So they have to be really efficient in how they do accounting. And so I think it's really interesting to watch. And be in it and see how many things, how much innovation is there that farmers have had to come up with to get there. One of my side gigs is doing some consulting for some like DC groups that are looking at the ag space, and every time I talk to one of them, it's like how big the space is and how much innovation this space doesn't have yet. You start talking about remote bin radars, and I think I've had 4 or 5 conversations with groups that are like, we want to know about bin radars and how to use it, and like that this isn't a thing. Whereas if you go into like a different manufacturing space, this is a thing that's like,
everybody has it.
This is the thing. So again, it's both sides of the coin. Like there's a ton of innovation in the ag space, and people drive by really shocked at how much innovation there is because there just isn't a lot of spotlight on it. But the other side, there's a lot of upside that's sitting out there with either tech or some other industries that can come in and share some of the stuff that's going on outside of it. I think the hard part is it all costs money.
For sure. It's where do you spend your next dollar? Right. And I think it's interesting because most people will drink milk, eat an ice cream cone, have cheese on their pizza, and just be like, no big deal. And then maybe they can push it back to saying there's some people milking some cow somewhere, but they don't understand what it takes to get there, right, to that milk product. And then certainly when it comes out of the cow, like what happens and how it gets on the shelf. Because I think the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes is literally just, I think, help show people that there's one small part of the agriculture industry upstate that's massive and innovative and technical and focused that people don't even know about to get to the end, which is so cool.
And again, and we're talking about this smart, it's a big sector, but it's a tiny little dot on the map of New York and the ag space, which is, my experience with the Eldreds is, you would have no idea what the amount of innovation and the amount of hard work that those guys are putting into. I remember having meetings, about the business while standing in the cow aisle covered in manure with the owners and being like, talking about what it is we're doing, but like they're in it. And I think that, the technology, but, talk about, our ag team, Tim Foster does an incredible job. He's one of the best agronomists I've ever had the opportunity to work with, who and also really into farming, really knows his stuff. The amount of technology in that space that he has to have mastery of, and how to, trend lines, and how do we use the most of the yield data we get, and where are we putting tile, and where's the best return on investment for some of this stuff. So
because he's trying to maximize margin, and he grows corn and soybeans,
and how many bushels to the acre. And I will say he doesn't get enough credit for the amount of quality he puts into what he does, and how much he pays attention. Because when I come back and say, hey, look, your last truck had a 2 for VOM, he's like, I'm going to come up with a better way, so that way this doesn't happen, or I'm going to come up with better controls. And he will put in the hours in the sprayer. Last year he put I think it was grape juice or something on the corn, because he was trying to keep the bugs or keep the birds off of it. But that's the pass he didn't have to make, but he did it because he was trying to make a better product, because ultimately it's going to another farm is going to use that corn.
Yeah.
So I think, again, we spent the last time talking about this one little blip in the radar, but there's 1,000 of these stories all over the place of everyone trying to come up with that 1% better. How do we take something that we have today, make it a little bit better, and support this greater New York State process?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know I didn't tell you that we were doing this specifically.
Thanks.
But believe it or not, that was 50 minutes, which is kind of cool. Yeah. And I think we learned a lot about it. So I wanted to thank Evan. Evan's obviously an expert in this area, and it was really fun to talk to him. And hopefully we can do it again sometime soon.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, actually.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.